when I came home, there wasn't a lot of reintegration. You literally was in a combat zone, and then within 24 hours, you were back in the States. And so people poured adoration on you, and they made you this hero. And then when you come home, well, you're just another guy, you're just another 22-year-old kid. It's a chapter in your book, but you need to turn the page and write another chapter.
Hey guys, it's Rainey Romero here with the lovely law firm for another episode of the Carolina Justice Report. This is a good one. It's all about Veterans Day. We're excited. We have a veteran guest today, so stay tuned. Welcome back. So today I'm joined always with the lovely attorney, Amy Lawrence.
Hey.
But today we have a special guest. This is George Kite. He is a veteran of multiple branches, and we're excited to have him on today for our Veterans Week. So welcome.
Welcome. Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to kind of delve into this because we all celebrate Veterans Day every year, but I don't think that we always think about what that means really to be a veteran and to kind of honor veterans. And so give us a little bit of a background on you and your time as a veteran.
Oh, man.
No
okay.
pressure.
So I'm what they call a 9/11 baby. I actually swore in right before 9/11 happened. I have a funny story. I actually swore in on September 8th, 2001, which is a Saturday as a senior at Conway High School. And so I joined the Marine Corps, and I actually started my career out as a presidential guard to George Bush. And as an 18-year-old kid from Conway, that got boring really fast. So I was told that there was a war coming. My buddies were kind of telling us, and so I left Camp David to go and join them out in California. And during my time there, I ended up serving 2 tours over in Iraq. Operation Vigilant Resolve in Fallujah in 2004, which was right after Blackwater civilians were murdered and hanged from a bridge. And then I went back for the first elections in 2005 in Fallujah. And then I came home and tried to, start life here in beautiful Conway, South Carolina, and try to figure out things as a 22-year-old kid trying to navigate the course of life. And ended up joining the Army National Guard. Inadvertently serving 4 years active with them, and did my third deployment to Iraq/Kuwait during Operation New Dawn when they were closing Iraq. At that time, I had gone and graduated Army Sniper School and was conducting some fun stuff on the border there when ISIS was getting big. So I came home and kind of continued to do that, and here I am about 20 years later. Looking to retire soon. Now I'm the operating non-commissioned officer in charge at the range operations at Fort Jackson here in South Carolina. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service, of course.
Well, thanks for the support.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I don't even know where to start. This may seem like a really simple question, but what makes a veteran a veteran?
Oh, well, actually it is pretty simple. So 6 months of service.
Okay, 6 months.
That's simple.
Really?
180 days. Y'all might have to Google it, but I believe it's 180 days of service.
Okay.
A lot of people think that you have to be a combat veteran. It's not true. Some people think that you have to complete an enlistment. That's also not true. If you join and let's say you get injured during boot camp, a lot of times they kind of grant you veteran status if it's under 6 months, but usually it's 180 days.
Okay.
My math is right? 180 days is 6 months. 90 days is 3. Yep.
You would know best.
Yeah.
You can't ask us. So, okay, well, that's actually good to know because for some reason, I was thinking like, even if you were in for 30 days, you're a veteran. Once you were sworn in, you're considered a veteran once you're out. So that's actually interesting to me. Now, you do a lot of work in the community as far as helping other veterans cope with life after the military.
Yeah.
Why is that something that's needed?
Oh, man. So when I came home, being a young guy, there wasn't a lot of reintegration. You literally was in a combat zone, and then within 24 hours, you were back in the States. And you could have been, within 48 hours, you could have been on your last mission and could have lost a friend. And then within 24 hours, you had flown back to California, which is where I was stationed. And, you're just kind of walking through Walmart. And combat life and fighting a war, you kind of have to get into a rhythm of things that is completely different than regular life. And once you kind of get into that mindset, it's really hard to disengage yourself and say, flip the switch, if you will. And so as a young man, I came home and all I had was a high school diploma. I graduated from Conway High School, and while I was in, nowadays when there's less combat, it's easy for you to gain college credits. But while I was there, all I did was go one deployment after another. And at one point in time, I think I was only home for 4 months. I came home in August and I left in December. So, you didn't really have time for that extracurricular. So I came home, had this high school diploma. It was in the height of the '08 recession. Couldn't get any jobs. So I was trying to go, so I started going to college. At the time, the GI Bill would only give you pay for school, and then you would only get like $1,400 to live off of, which sounds like a lot.
No, it doesn't.
But it's not.
No,
Well,
it doesn't.
depends.
No,
Yeah,
it
I guess it depends on who you ask. And back then, if you remember, gas also went up, and I was driving a stupid 1994 Chevy Suburban.
A gas guzzler.
Yeah,
right?
and like all you had to do was start it up, and you
22,
lost, yeah,
23
yeah.
gallons. Yeah.
So, you couldn't really drive around because of gas and couldn't really get a job. And I noticed that I wasn't the only one, that a lot of my other friends were having the same issues no matter where they were. Friends in California, friends in New York, friends in Florida, and here at home. And I was like, man, this is terrible. Like there was a point in time where we thought we were gods among men because, you were a cocky 18-year-old kid, but honestly, we were in the best shape of our life. We were highly trained. We were having a good time. We were young. We felt like we were invincible. And so when you get poured adoration on you, everyone was very pro military back then. They still are, but back then 9/11 was still fresh. And so people poured adoration on you, and they made you this hero. And then when you come home, well, you're just another guy. You're just another 22-year-old kid. And not only are you 22, but all you have is a high school education, and you got to compete for these jobs. So I realized quickly that there needed to be something, if at the minimum, another guy or another girl who could walk you through some of these things and say, listen, as soon as you get out, you need to do this, this, and this, because they don't do that for you.
Right.
There's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to the VA. If anyone's ever dealt with the federal government, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And for a 22-year-old kid, once again, you have no clue. I don't even think I even really knew the ins and outs of buying a car by the time I was 22, let alone how to file things with the VA, how to file for benefits and claims and things of that nature. So I just wanted someone. I just thought, well, if I had a big brother, if I had somebody that I could lean on, I think this would have been different.
Yeah.
And so I said,
Like a mentorship.
Like a mentorship. And I was like, I want to be that big brother for these people. So
That's great. And I didn't even realize that was not. That should be like when you get out, part of the process.
You would think so. And I think a lot of guys, that's probably, we were screaming it from the rooftops. You get like a little class, they call it TAPS, it's your transition assistance program or something like that. And it's funny, they're like, come in and wear civilian clothes. And you're so into the system so much that when you're on base, we never wore, like very rarely wore civilian clothes. So we'd go into this class, and it was supposed to be laid back, and people didn't call you by rank. And it was basically like, hey, write a resume. They look at your resume and say, oh, great, you did a great resume. I think
You're like, you didn't even spell check it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they brought in some career day. They brought in some guys, and they're like, oh, we work for the telephone company. And then like, I actually have a crazy story where I had this female officer who came in for the Torrance Police Department somewhere out in California, and they were telling me about how great it would be. And then literally a week later, this lady was on a shootout. She was with the SWAT team, and she was in a shootout on the news. And I was like, well, probably not going to do that. And head on back to Conway. And,
hard pass.
Being an ignorant kid, I thought that, they were offering like somewhere like $90,000 a year starting out back in like 07, 08.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, well, Conway's got to be close to that, right? Horry County's got to be close to that.
And close to my mom, so
and close to my
right,
family, yeah. So, and then I come home and they were offering like $23,000 a year, and I was like, nah, that was a bad idea. I probably should have stayed in California. But yeah.
Well, and we know that the suicide rates for veterans is very high.
Yeah.
Which, now with you explaining this, a lot of that makes sense. They come back and they're just lost.
So we were talking before we started about self-worth and self-value. I think the civilian world, they want to help so bad that they get hung up on some small misconceptions. And I think one of the biggest ones is post-traumatic stress disorder. Not so much that it's not a pandemic or epidemic, it is. But for a lot of us, when we join the military seeking a family, either a family that we didn't have or a better version of the one that we did have. Mm-hmm. So with that, a lot of people, I've learned a lot through counseling people that a lot of people carry around a lot of trauma. Either the military has nothing to do with it.
We all carry around a lot of trauma, right?
So like there's a lot of us who are just we're basically just balls of meat trying to wage our way through all this trauma. So, the suicide rate, for you to be a man who has been told, or a woman who's been told that you are a superhero, and that you are at the top of your food chain, and you come from small towns all across the country, and everyone adores you. When you're a young man, all the ladies think you're good looking, right? All the friends want to be like you. And then all of a sudden that stops. And you, as a soldier or a Marine or a sailor or an airman, you were given millions of dollars worth of equipment, and they believed that you were responsible, trustworthy enough to handle this equipment. You signed for it and everything. You're responsible for this stuff. And you come home and people don't even respect you enough to allow you to do, simple things like, I don't know if this translates or not, but like driving a forklift. Like you can't drive like in the military, we just hopped on the forklift and we went to town. And of course we were supervised, but we did the work. Here you have to be forklift certified, you gotta have a class and blah, blah, blah. And that's
like I was driving a tank 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Like now I've got to get a license to do a forklift.
And I'm not even good enough to do that because you just say I can't. And so for guys like me who, I came from a poor family in, here in South Carolina, a rural area, and I built my life off of that. And so a lot of us were like, hey man, I am this. And you were, I was that. I was through and through. I was a Marine. So when I came home, I still try to lean on that, and you can't do that. Just like I was telling you guys, I tell a lot of dudes, it's a chapter in your book, but you need to turn the page and write another chapter. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean something. And it doesn't mean it didn't turn you into who you are today. The respect, the integrity, the honesty, the work ethic, all those things, is still part of you. And you told me yesterday or today not to be early. Like I was still early. I just had to drive around until it was time to get here because
you could come in.
I being 15 minutes early is kind of part of who I am. Yeah. And so you have a lot of guys who took their self-worth from being in the military. And so when you come home and all that, leaves and you just become a regular guy, which is okay to be a regular guy, it weighs heavily on them.
Well, you implode, right?
Yeah, 100%.
All your self-worth, it's just like girls who've been told they're pretty their whole life. And then as they get older, they implode.
That's their
right?
worth, yeah.
Because that's where your value, your self-worth is, that's where your stock is.
Well, we see this a lot even in sports, right? People who are like star athletes in high school or something, and then after that's done, they still live in that those glory days, right? And they can't get past it.
And they can't enjoy the present because they're too busy living in the past.
They're trying to still go hang out with the boys.
Even if they can, yeah.
And part of the hardest part is telling a guy or a girl who did, this, that, and the other, and say, hey, you can learn new things. There's more out there, there's more to it than just that. And I know your identity right now is this, but I promise you, if you pick this up, things will get better and you can build yourself in a different direction.
I love this. I love all the work that you're doing. I know that you work with veterans. You also work with veteran families. You also have your veteran podcast that you do. So you are out there changing lives based on your experience.
Tell us let's talk about this podcast that you have.
Well, it's called,
we know a little about it, but let's talk about that podcast because I just my heart, I'm just drawn to it immediately.
Yeah.
So what's the title?
So it's called Violence and Jesus, and I know some of you are going to give me some hate for this, especially my theologians, but we call it Violence and Jesus because I'm a Christian believer, and trying to navigate the faith knowing that you've done some hood rat stuff.
some military things
for the government, and that you have conducted operations depending on whatever it is. We're a lot of us are still kind of sensitive about that stuff. But me being an Army sniper, and I have friends who are Green Berets, have buddies who are SEALs, and guys who have done some pretty high speed stuff, and for them to compartmentalize that and to try to improve their life and justify it through their faith, right? So a lot of times they think, well, I'm not even good enough to be a Christian. Not only do I suck as a civilian because I have these mental health issues, or I don't feel like I belong, but now I'm struggling with my faith because, it clearly states that thou shalt not kill. So not only is that, but they have to live with this. And so there was a niche in church. So I went to church and I was looking for, I gravitated towards what I call the dirtbags. The
those
guys,
are my people too.
the guys, the girls, the ones who've seen and done some things and a little rough around the edges. They might drop a little cuss word every once in a while, but they'll be all right.
Amy doesn't know anything about that.
And so that's the kind of people that I gravitated towards in church. Like I was like, you're my guy. You need to come and hang out with me. And they're like, well, I cuss a little bit. Great. No one cares.
I don't think Jesus cares.
just whenever your mom's around, let's not do that.
Right.
But there was a niche for those kind of guys. And so I realized that people were kind of skipping over that. And there was a need for someone to kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And not only tell these guys like, hey, you're not being left out. So it's a podcast. It's not, I realize people listen to podcasts for different reasons. Some of it is educational, some of it is different. Ours is just literally three guys just sitting around talking about life as a veteran, as a dad, as a business owner, and just trying to navigate the faith and navigate regular life. It's every denomination. We have people of every walk of faith to come and talk about it. But what I really like to do is talk to some of these guys that are have done some really crazy, special agent type stuff.
Yeah.
And to try to figure out how you came home and just now rocking some khakis and a polo every day, drinking Starbucks, and how you went literally from one end of the spectrum.
Fallujah.
Yeah. To coming home. And
Huge transition.
Yeah, it's a huge transition.
Yeah.
So.
And then, and we've talked about this before, you come home,
Mm-hmm.
you've done things, and you've got to reconcile this thing that you did that's supposed to be good, right?
Right.
It was a good thing, but it's not, it doesn't feel good.
Right, yeah.
And even we've dealt with police officers all the time, and even when they have to, it's a good shot, everything was right, they did everything right. Even when things are justified, it doesn't sit right because you're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the head and the heart are a million miles away from each other, and somewhere you've got to reconcile the two because you're a whole person and a whole body. And that's got to be so hard. It's got to be so hard.
It's tough. It's tough because now that I'm a dad and I've got 4 beautiful daughters, what happens is, of course, what's in the past is in the past, and we can't change that. And some people say they don't have any regrets. I have a lot of regrets, and
well, they say that because their heart has to survive.
yeah,
right?
and I have no problem with those regrets. And I say, well, if it wasn't for, that sucks. I shouldn't have done that. And I regret doing that. So the next time that comes up, let's not do that.
Yes, that's how we
Let's
grow,
not do that.
right?
So I'm like, hey, but when I look back and I look at my kids, a lot of stuff is really tough, and we deal with it differently. And, I'm going to tell you, and this is my personal opinion, is that the way not to deal with it is with self-medication, drugs, and alcohol. And unfortunately, that does lead into suicide and suicidal thoughts.
Well, you think that everybody thinks that's the hard way out, but it's not. They
the
think
easy way out.
it is, and it's really easy.
Man. Yeah.
It's a lot easier whether you coming back from the military or you just got divorced or you've lost a parent to drink, right?
Right.
Like to pick up a glass of wine where you've drank because it's a lot easier to numb it than to really have to deal with
It's so much harder for you
the
to
reality.
Yeah.
So
Of the pain.
You kind of you learn to compartmentalize while you're in the military and while you're in combat, and it's just a necessary part of the mission. So, if you lose one guy, you have 11 others that you have to live for, and that's easier there. When you come home, and not necessarily that they took them away from you, but you moved on. You're now out of the military, so all those guys are spread to the winds. You don't have that support system like you used to. So I encourage guys and girls, when you come home from the military and you take that uniform off, find and develop that network. And if you don't have one, call me. Go find me on Facebook. I don't care. Shoot me a message. I open my house every year for Thanksgiving. You're welcome. I don't care. Bring your mom, dad, bring everybody. Bring the Chihuahua. I don't care. My house, I got 4 kids.
It's a circus
my
anyway.
furniture's already tore up anyway. Yeah. So, but I encourage people to have that network, because once again, part of it was belonging to this organization, being around these people who valued each other and lifted each other up. And if it's in a church, or if it's in a support group, if it's in a counseling session, if it's with a bunch of men and women that you you're having doing life together. I think everybody's saying that nowadays, but
Doing life.
doing
Word.
life, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah, that and there's some motorcycle clubs as well. I have a good friend of mine who joined the war vets and combat vets and stuff like that, and they're doing good things too. And there is an outlet for it, and there is a place for you to release and be able to talk, because a lot of times learning how to get over that barrier, talking about what you did, where you've been, with people who weren't there is the toughest part. But once you do, man, it feels so much better. It feels good.
I think anytime I've done a lot of like therapy, group therapy and stuff like that, you realize that other people's stories, that there's this like thread that ties you all together. And I've never been to Fallujah, but I know what it means. I know what it feels like to have somebody's life in your hands and feel like you failed them.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that trauma that kind of binds us all.
Yep.
And so when you find somebody that sees that their story and yours,
Yeah.
there's something that's comforting about.
There is.
There's some, when they say misery loves company. Well, so does trauma a little bit, because you realize that we're all kind of like,
You're not alone.
yeah, and we're all rowing in the same boat. Just trying to do life
Yeah.
and make it, and try to be a good person when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And not hurt anybody in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, do you mind if we put your contact in the
I'd love it.
text
Please.
section of this
Please
when we
do.
post it up?
Please do. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the work
George
you're
Kite, we
doing.
love you.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Really.
We do love
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You're doing great work, and we're just
You
so
are.
Well,
happy that you came to tell everybody about it.
Well, I hope that if we can save families, families are a big deal, and being able to keep families together and to not only understand what causes some of this trauma and what the after effects are, but that sometimes we inadvertently drag other people into it, and that also hurts them and can destroy marriages. So.
You know what I heard the other day? I heard someone say this, and it resonated with me, is that we all have this trauma that we carry with us. And a lot of things we can't control what happened to us, but what we can control is how we deal with it.
That's it.
Right.
And that's what we're responsible. That's where our responsibility lies, and how we deal with it, how we process it, and how we go forward after it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you're helping people figure that out. That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. Trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great. Again, thank you for joining. Folks, happy Veterans Day on Friday. Hopefully this helps you to kind of place some more weight on what a veteran is and the kind of struggles that they go through. So hopefully you can help them. We, of course, the Lovely Law Firm, really appreciate all of our veterans and all the work that you guys do. We support you. If there's anything that we can do to help, let us know. You can find us anywhere that you consume your media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can visit us online at justiceislovely.com. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us.
When life gets ugly, justice is love.